Hey everyone, if you have not seen part one of this video, check it out. This will make a whole lot more sense. I'll link it in the comments below. So we are talking about when you should use the map method in JavaScript. So you're going to use the map method whenever you have an array of a certain amount of elements. Those elements could be any type. It could be strings, numbers, booleans, objects. It could even be like nested structures like arrays of elements. But when you have an array of a certain amount of elements and you want to output an array of the same amount of elements as the input array, right? So in this example, I have an array of objects. It has two objects in it. Each object has two key value pairs. So the question here is, given an array of objects, return an array of subarrays. We sometimes call this a 2D array, where each subarray corresponds to one of these objects and contains only the values, not the keys, of that object. So we want to end up with something like this here, where we have this sort of nested array structure. Each array contains only the values of its corresponding object. So how do we get that? This is sort of my like brute force naive solution. I am creating a new array. I am looping over the input array with the for each method, and I'm breaking out each object, just calling it object. So for each object in the array, I want to convert it to, what do I want to convert it to? I want it to create a subarray. So I want to create an array of only the values of that object. So how can I actually just get the values of each object? What I am doing is first creating an empty subarray. Now I am going to grab the key value pairs of each object by looping over the object using the for in loop. And then I am breaking out the value as a variable by accessing the object at each key. And then I'm taking that value and I'm pushing it into the new subarray. So I'm doing this for each object in the original array. I'm creating a subarray, I'm pushing the values into it, and then I'm pushing that new subarray into this new array, which was that original empty array. So what's going to happen basically when we run through this, it's going to loop over each object. For each object, it's going to loop over each key value pair. It's going to only keep the values of that key value pair, like banana and $1 here, and push them into the new subarray. And that new subarray is basically going to, in a sense, we can kind of think of it as like replacing this object in the new array. So each one of these objects will kind of become a new array. You can kind of think of it in that sense. And then we're returning out the array of arrays, which when we actually log this out, let's see, and we do have our expected array of subarrays, our 2D array. Now, this to me, again, is a perfect time to use the map method. Why? Because we have an input array of two objects, and we have an output array of two arrays. So I like to think of it as kind of in the output array, these arrays are sort of replacing the objects in the input array. That keeps me sort of in the mindset of, okay, map method, two things in, two things out. So let's refactor our, I should have actually called this use for each. So we're gonna refactor this function. I'm gonna create just an entirely new function. Let's call it, again, use map function, use map. It's going to take in an array of objects. So I'm just going to call that array. And so how are we going to turn the objects in the input array into arrays? So what I'm going to do is I want to say, basically, for each object in the input array, I want to only keep its values and push them into a new array. So I want to loop over the objects of the array. I'm going to use map to do this, right? Again, map is a loop. So I'm going to say array map. Again, map takes in a callback function. I'm going to call each element that I'm currently looking at object. And I want to grab that object's values. Again, I could loop over each object and grab the key value pairs and only keep the values. I'm going to use a little bit of a shortcut. I'm going to use the object values method that I have available to me in JavaScript. This is a native method. So I'm going to grab the values of my object. And what I want to do is, how can I sort of push these into a new array? Remember that map under the hood kind of creates a new array and then returns it out. So all I have to do to push these into the new array is I want to return them. Okay. So what this is basically doing, this object.values method, is it will grab and sort of spread the new values into a new array. So let's kind of see how this plays out. I also have to remember to take the new array that this will create, that the map method will create, and I have to remember to return it. So let's log this out again, and you can see that I have the same results. So kind of like step by step, what is happening here? I am mapping over the objects of our input array. And for each object, I'm saying, grab that object's values, right? So I'm grabbing banana and $1. And when we use the values, the object.values method, it's going to take all of the values of that object and spread them into a new array. And it's going to take that new array and it is returning it out. So in a sense, when we return inside of map, it's kind of taking that new array of values and spreading it, or I'm sorry, it's kind of taking that new array of values and pushing it into the new array that map creates under the hood, and then map will automatically return out that new array. And then we are just taking that sort of parent array, that array of arrays, and we're returning it out at the very end. So step by step, we are looking at each object. We're taking only the values. We're spreading these values into a new array. That new array is kind of going to replace each object inside of the new array of arrays. And then we have to make sure that we return the new array of arrays. So again, perfect scenario for map. We have an input of an array of 2 objects, and we have an output of an array of 2 arrays. Thanks for watching. If you found this helpful, feel free to share it with a friend. I'll see you all later.